Hello, this is David Gray. Just wanted to have a short discussion with you about the situation analysis for consumer behaviour. There are a small number of learning objectives for this particular video, just to look at the DECIDE method for decision-making process, look at preparing a situation analysis, some idea in relation to SWOT, have a look at some of the approaches that Blue Ocean take, and that's where we'll start. Let's talk about what we mean by decision making. Quite a long time ago, Peter Drucker talked about decision making being a rational and systematic process, defining the sequence of steps, etc. Now, this may be true in relation to the kind of exercise that we're developing, but it's not true in relation to consumer decision-making in general. It doesn't mean that consumer decision-making is rational. If you don't believe me, just read Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. And he talks about the basis of heuristics, consumer biases, all these kinds of things in behavioral economics. In terms of what we're looking at, we define a situational analysis as a detailed assessment of the environment, including the evaluation of the consumer, the competition, the company, the target markets, any other factors which are likely to affect the success of the program which you're looking at. Now, for the purposes of this video, when we look at situation analysis, you've been given the task of analysing your choice of whether it's a bank, a mobile phone firm, a political party, or your own organisation. Now, the reason for selecting the bank, the mobile phone company, and the political organisation is because of the research which I've done previously in this area, and I have databases, Excel databases available to you to help you in this endeavour. So let's have a look at the DECIDE method. 6 steps, but only the first 3 relate to the situation analysis, defining the problem, identifying the decision factors, and considering the relevant information. And number 3 is where obviously the most detail is contained in terms of considering the relevant information. So the first thing is to decide what the problem is. And when you look at a problem, you need to look at your objectives in terms of the marketing plan, what kind of constraints you have, and how you're actually going to measure success. When you identify the decision factors, there are 2 major factors which have to be looked at. The first one are those factors which are controllable by you as the decision maker, such as the marketing mix. And these are the things that you can manipulate, but there are a whole bunch of uncontrollable factors out there which lead to uncertainties, and you have to understand what those uncertainties are and potentially what the likely impact of those uncertainties is on your business idea or the product or the service or the idea that you're looking at. The relevant information, what we're talking about are your understanding of the industry, your understanding of the audience, your understanding of the competitors, and your own organisation and what the alternatives are. So when we consider relevant information, right, we know that actually identifying what's relevant can be difficult. Often you'll be faced with a situation where there's too much information. You need to work out what matters and what doesn't. And you need to separate that information between which is factual versus opinion. So you want to be really, really careful about people's opinions that come out. So, and sometimes you've got to create the relevant information, such as conducting your own survey. So if you've been through steps 1 to 3, that's when you've completed a situation analysis. So let's have a look at the nature of the industry, the market. So you want to know what the structure is, what the trends are, what the performance, who the competitors are, how do consumers buy, can the market be segmented, and what the requirements are for success. Now, I just use a finance example here. For instance, you can download the IBIS World industry report for finance in Australia. The latest information is August 2018. And if you pick the banking case study, there's an awful lot of information about finance, the structure, the industry, the competitive landscape, the key statistics. There's also another report looking at the national and regional commercial banks. There's also a report on building societies, mortgage brokers, and a number of other industries as well. So there is information available to help you understand the structure of the industry and how it works. If you're looking at the organisation itself, you pick say you're looking at the finance industry and you pick a particular bank. You want to know what their objectives are, what the issues are, what the products they offer, and factors which have contributed to the present situation, such as the Banking Royal Commission. Now, for example, IBIS World have a report on all of the major banks and financial institutions, and I just pick one here, which is the Bendigo and Adelaide Bank, and there's a profile report, and you can obtain this information from the library's database if you wish. When you're looking at the target market and the audience, this is when you need to get deep and look at an in-depth analysis of what's actually happening within your particular audience group. So you can conduct some audience research. You can look at maybe personality archetypes. You want to be able to identify what you know about them, what kind of media they use, are they likely to be resistant to you, and most of this information will come from survey data. As I said, if you choose the finance example, I will provide to you an Excel spreadsheet with some research I did back in 2012, which has a detailed look at the decision-making process for consumers in relation to a number of financial products. Again, when you're considering the relevant information, you need to think about, well, I know this is all the stuff that I know. What kind of plan of action can I put together? And what can organisations do and what they should do? I mean, for example, there's a whole series of steps which banks are undertaking at the moment in respect to the Banking Royal Commission. Again, thanks for watching this video. And one of the other things that you might need to look at are some of the potential outcomes. So if you choose a particular course of action, what will be the competitor's response? What's the potential profitability of each course of action? And what's the best course of action to pursue? Okay, just a little bit moving on to SWOT metrics. So sometimes, it's called strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. However, it depends what kind of industry you're in. For example, if you're in a fast-moving industry, a lot of technological change, a regular SWOT analysis can be a useful device. However, if you're in a slow-moving industry, often a SWOT can be a significant waste of time. You can spend a lot of time analysing things, and things don't change very much. So when you look at the SWOT matrix, you'll see over here, so the aim is for you to be able to convert weaknesses into strengths and to convert threats into opportunities. Now, strengths and weaknesses look at the internal mechanisms within the firm, and opportunities and threats look at those externalities to the firm. There's a SWOT matrix which you can use to analyse your particular organisation. So the major benefits of a SWOT are simplicity, lower costs. There are some guidelines that you can have a look at. I'll distribute this presentation as a PowerPoint slide presentation on the Interact site. So SWOT should also examine issues from the customer's perspective. What do customers believe about you as your particular organisation? What do they think of the product, etc.? So you can use SWOT to help you establish a strategic focus. For example, if you've got many internal strengths and many external opportunities, you can afford to have a more aggressive approach. However, if you have many internal weaknesses and many external threats, you might have to take a defensive approach. And the approach will depend on whether you're a market leader, a challenger, a follower, or actually working in a niche market. So developing a SWOT using the DECIDE model is not the only way you can approach things. For example, Kim and Mayborn wrote their famous book on the blue ocean strategy. And they looked at one of the things in their chapter 3, looking at reconstructing market boundaries. And there are 6 pathways for reconstructing your market boundaries. For example, you could look at alternative industries, strategic groups, create new buyer or user groups, change the product offering, or change the functional and or emotional orientation of an industry. And there are some examples covering each of the pathways. So, for example, you could ask, if, for example, you want to look at an alternative industry, you can ask, what are the alternative industries to your industry? Why do buyers trade across these? And for example, Cirque du Soleil is one great example which refocused its emphasis from a circus to a theatre. Andre Rieu focused from a classical concert to a classical pop concert. Okay, strategic groups, why do buyers trade up to the higher cost quality? I mean, for example, Qantas, Jetstar versus Qantas is a very good example of strategic groups. So you can have the one organisation where Jetstar deals with the economy side of the business, and Qantas Full Service deals in another strategic group competing against international airlines. So I think that's while there are a few other slides in this presentation, that's all I really wanted to talk about now, just to help you on your way, and just have a look at the overall PowerPoint presentation to get a better idea. Thanks a lot for listening.